Hello, welcome back. My name is Myre, and this is the Star Citizen monthly report for June 2021. We're a couple days late for this, but let's go ahead and get started anyway. So, let's have a look. Alright, so obviously it says Alpha 314 is fast approaching, but we're actually right now on the PTU. With that being said, let's go ahead and have a look and see what else is happening under the hood with Star Citizen. Okay. So the AI content team says, so early in the month, the AI content team was heavily involved in preparing for a 4-day motion capture session. Okay. It's always very interesting when they talk about motion capture because, like, for a lot of the stuff they do for Star Citizen, you always think, what else could they possibly be adding? Because this is specifically for Star Citizen, right? So each related team attended was able to provide information directly to the actor, which was a new experience for many, and gave the team a greater appreciation of the processes and learnings that will help with future sessions. Some of the recorded assets have already been delivered and are currently being made functional for game use. So they don't really talk about what they were doing motion capture for. A 4-day shoot, no less. So June also saw the team extend the Patreon activity to handle the new shops they're working on and analyze the usables that will be required to populate the PU outposts. The security guard and vendor activities and the related usable setups were also finished. The security guard became the primary use case for dynamic conversations, with the devs setting up 2 conversations that can randomly be selected by a civilian approaching the guard. Okay. Oh yeah, because they want guards to be able to tell you where to go and like what to see, like World of Warcraft guards could do, but I imagine voiced as well. Reporting a crime and asking for directions. Oh, okay. So there's an interesting point here to be made for reporting a crime, because right now when you get shot, you automatically just like report that crime to somebody. In games like Elite Dangerous, there was a thing where like you could have it toggled so that if a crime was committed to you, you could report it, or you couldn't. It'd be nice if there was like a third option where like if a crime was done to you, then you could report it if you wanted to, but you wouldn't have to report it immediately. So like you'd be like on a list of things you could report. But yeah. Anyway, so they also completed a pass of the security guard's wildlines and began using the reputation system to influence the behavior logic flow. So you can be like a high reputation with security guards, reporting NPCs like pickpocketing people or what. So the vendor behavior was expanded to support NPCs collecting combinations of food and drink items from different usables and delivering them to the player as a single order. Okay. AI content also worked with the dialogue team to identify the assets needed to reinforce the flow. So right now we have the bartender, and in the really basic form of the bartender, you ask for 1 drink and the bartender goes and gets that 1 drink and then comes back and gives it to you. But they want different kinds of vendors than the bartender. Things like mission givers will give you like items, and they've also talked about, you know, like in-flight hosts and hostesses for like things like the Starliner. And who knows, maybe they want the restaurants to actually function. So like them having to go and collect specific things, put them on a tray and bring those items that could be like a combination of things to you is kind of cool. And it seems like that's exactly what they want to do here. So to make serving food more tactile and realistic, we have identified food grip types. Okay, for the new items, we are working with the props team to package the food when served. No more hot dogs placed directly on dirty counters. Okay. Alright, so the AI features team says for space combat, the AI feature team worked on the technology to allow AI to identify and target subcomponents of other ships, such as engines, weapons, etc. This will allow a greater range of tactics to be selected. For example, taking out the engines of a ship so it can't pursue, and then firing at it from afar. The AI will retrieve the same type of information from the subcomponents as it does from the whole spaceship. including the amount of damage dealt, which will allow the team to prioritize attacking the weapons causing the most damage. This new ability means some existing combat behaviors must be modified, such as the orbital strafe maneuver, to consider the side of the spaceship that this targeted subcomponent is on. So we currently as players have subcomponent targeting, but right now we can only target weapons. In a future patch, we'll also be able to target a subcomponent called a shield emitter, so that you could take down shields on much larger craft than your own and stuff like that. And it seems like NPCs will also be able to do similar things depending on their habits and traits. Like if an NPC wants to kill you, they're likely going to want to just, shoot the cockpit or whatever. But if they want to apprehend you, then they might want to take out your engines or something instead. So the team also implemented the chatty and quiet traits used in the spaceship dogfight behaviors that control how often AI communicates in combat. This involved identifying non-critical wildlines, such as collisions, repeated dealt damage, and receiving damage, and undertaking a trait check to see if they should be triggered. So yeah, currently in the verse, like if you're fighting NPCs, they just kind of calm you and they show up in the chat and they swear. And they just keep doing that. So there's apparently going to be a trait as part of the archetype system that'll tell you or inform the game of if that NPC is that kind of way. So for human AI, they worked on the technology and animations to control how an NPC reacts to stimuli, such as gunshots and seeing an enemy, seeing or hearing an enemy when interacting with a usable. This technology is needed to bridge the gap between the AI's usable and reaction behaviors while exiting the usable and getting the AI back to the nav mesh, which is their patrol path and stuff. So for example, if it spots an enemy player, it needs to reach for a weapon to begin fighting, convey its level of reaction to the player, and get it into a combat behavior position. With a range of different usables that can put them in different positions and postures, the team needed to identify the commonalities between usables to prevent having to create bespoke animations for each one. However, there are still lots of different variables, such as direction, reaction level, armed, unarmed, etc., that need careful management to prevent vast increases in the number of animation assets. So this is likely what that 4-day shoot that they talked about earlier is for, because not only do they have to do all these different reaction states for, like, let's say pirates, for instance, who may be armed or unarmed. They might be walking down the pirate base without any guns, they see you, and then they have to have a pirate specific or aggressive specific reaction, like they have to sound the alarm, run to get their own weapon, then attack you. But also in the last monthly report, they talked about just civilians and how a civilian would react, to like somebody who is armed. Think of like Call of Duty's No Russian level. Alright, so they also produced a prototype for the utility behavior that will allow AI agents to transfer cargo crates between areas. So NPCs will identify loose crates, pick them up, and take them to an area and stack them. The next AI can take the stacked crates and transfer them to another area as desired. This behavior builds upon a lot of different usable work, finding the crate usable, exiting the usable part of the pickup action rather than as a separate exit animation, finding a place that can accept the crate for stacking, disabling agents from taking crates that have other crates stacked upon them, and identifying when a stack is full. They also have an eye on how this will integrate on vehicular cargo storage. So they have this idea that they want your cargo and the stuff that your player owns to be physical, and this is where the persistent hubs and persistent hangars come in. And it does seem like they are married to this idea of having NPCs doing this for you. We've had stock and canned animations of NPCs doing this since 2.0. When we first got ArcCorp 1.0, ArcCorp 1.0, and you could glitch through underneath the old freelancer and see NPCs moving boxes around. It does seem like they want that to actually be a physical thing in the game. And they've spoken about how you as a player can move boxes around as well, so you don't have to necessarily wait for an NPC or pay X amount of NPCs to come in and help you. And it does sound also like this tech is just an extrapolation of the bartender tech. You know, it's the same thing, but instead of like glasses and drinks, it's boxes. So the first version of the unmanned missile turret behavior was implemented. This has proven that all the work done for spaceships is easily portable to multiple entities and will correctly handle any vehicles that want to shoot missiles to target. They also continued work on data and animation cleanup from motion capture sessions completed last month. All developers on the team supported optimizations, tweaks, and bug fixes for Alpha 3.14 too. So I do believe that they do want something like missile turrets to be a thing for stations to attack people, as well as the guns too. So I believe that's what they mean by these unmanned missile turrets. Alright, so AI tech. So the tech team started the month working on planetary navigation, improving the navigation mesh tiles to allow for a spherical surface representation of the mesh. They also added functionality to allow NPCs to correctly move along paths defined by the designers, giving a much more robust solution to allow characters to loop over open or closed paths of different shapes, restarting from the beginning where necessary. Okay. So that's that nav mesh thing again, just like the NPC moving on like a line and then coming off the line to do something and then going back into what they are doing. So work on 3D NPC navigation in EVA continued, with the team improving the collision avoidance system to support agents of different sizes. The rules were amended to allow smaller ships to try to avoid larger ones, and to allow large ships to not care as much about avoiding smaller ones. So, you know, think the Drake Kraken trailer, with the Kraken just going straight through a Vanguard because who cares? So the first pass was finished on the code to allow NPCs to control and move trolleys in a similar way to the player. They're currently extending the movement system to enable the selection of multiple path followers, which is important for trolleys that have a force-based controller, as it allows NPCs to decide how much force to apply to maintain the desired momentum. For the Subsumption Editor, the team continued to embed the tool into the game engine, which with a focus on allowing the main graph to include all the subgraphs in one view. This is particularly useful for mission logic, as it allows as it allows designers to have a better global view of the logic of each mission, and should reduce the mental effort needed to follow the logic between different graphs. The team was also busy with bug fixes and optimization for Alpha 3.14. Alright. So animation. Animation created a rough space whale loop for AI test with, and hope to design determine what else they might need in terms of gameplay. So the space whale isn't just supposed to be this thing that goes up and then like a tour guide goes, oh look, it's a storm wall, and it goes away. They have a whole gameplay loop designed around it that involves like landing on it and stuff, and who knows what else, looting stuff off it. They also worked on vendor sets to improve the various shops and vendors around the PU, which involved creating cowering assets to enable civilians to run and hide behind cover, janitor and arcade machine blockouts, and medical revival gameplay. So arcade machine blockouts for animation. So we've had these arcade machines in game for a long time. It seems like maybe perhaps they actually want us to be able to use them in game, and we have so many mini games CIG have made over the years that could be ported into Star Citizen and run in such a way that would make sense. You know, I would really love to see Hyper Vanguard Force 5 in Star Citizen. The facial animation team developed animations for emotes, eating and drinking, and various other systemic AI features. They completed a breakdown of the AI in the main world locations and created a large list of assets that require placing by the AI content team, with the goal to better implement the content they already have. Animations were also created for the salvage weapon. Okay. Art characters. So last month, the character artists continued developing 3 armor sets, which will also receive variants for various events and programs. So by programs, I'm guessing they just mean the subscription program, right? But event-wise variants, that sounds interesting. So maybe like Xenothreat 2, or maybe like Ninetales Lockdown variants. But yeah, 3 armor sets nonetheless. The tech designers completed their pass on the characters for Orizin's initial release and are currently adjusting loadouts in line with feedback and addressing graphical issues. The rest of the tech team supported Alpha 3.15 alongside the actor, feature, and design teams, which involved setting up a system for players to equip and unequip backpacks. So currently we have some backpacks now in 3.14's PTU with the Auriel armor, the one from Greycat, but you can't remove it yet. It does seem like they are married to being able to remove backpacks and stuff like that in 3.15. How the different ones will work and if you'll be able to wear a MacFlex Core backpack with your Auriel rig, well, we don't know yet. They'll also be adding new backpacks to the PU in support of the feature. They also worked on holographic props for all their assets for the physical inventory UI. The concept artists spent time working on event-themed items, created additional concept for the Pyro system, and explored possible gameplay interactions with the space whale creature. So, art environment. So the Montreal-based art team worked to finish the remaining hospital locations with the Space Clinics, Grimhax's Clinic, and Area 18's hospital now white box complete. They then moved on to the grey box phase, where they'll define the various modules in more detail and begin adding details to properly show the art intentions. It does seem like with hospitals, they more or less want to have very kind of similar things going with them, with New Babbage's hospital and Orizin's hospital both being very similar, with a pharmacy, with a place to register for insurance and that kind of thing. They also want hospitals on the rest stops as well, so you can have just a whole bunch of places that you can choose to spawn in. So we'll see if those will be coming in for 3.15, but it does seem like most of these major landing zones will be getting hospitals regardless of if there are none in those rest stops. So on the design side, the team began using derelict pieces of spaceships to create puzzles, like the jump puzzle I imagine for the fallen satellite for Clovis's mission, which will be populated with loot to encourage exploration and create pockets of new gameplay around Stanton. So with 3.15 again, we'll be getting backpacks, and they'll also be adding salvage items as well. Things like boxes, things like bottles, remember like the old Radagast barrels and stuff like that. So that's cool. So their initial goal is to produce 24 derelict puzzles, half planet-side and half in space. That's neat. Right now, you know, we have like things like the Fallen Starfarer, the Upside Down variant and things like that, but it'll be nice to have something like this, you know, just to change things up a bit, and also with the carrot of having items on those things to discover and maybe to sell for UEC. And then finally, they looked into defining building interior gameplay. So creating a prototype layout and looking into adding proper missions to it. They're also defining how this layout will fit into the procedural location creation tool currently in development by the tools team. So again, this is the Montreal-based art team, and they are, again, working on systemic stuff for the cities. You know how like big and like complex things like even Delamar's Levski is, you know, like how 75% of Levski is just like unexplored like stuff, you know, it's just rooms that have no meaning. So the Montreal-based art team, it's their job to do a whole bunch of stuff, including making things like, let's say, like Lorville's maintenance places, like, make sense, making even Orizin's Providence like platform, like useful for these missions. But before we get all that, I think that the first thing we'll probably see will be these outposts. These not outposts, these stations, these Lagrange space stations and stuff. having areas to EVA into to replace components. That was the one of the earliest concepts they talked about when it came to having mission zones and landing zones, giving you missions that aren't like space-based. So they're also close to completing the gas clouds that will surround jump points, including a second look for greater variety. Horizon is currently being closed out, with most focus on improving performance and fixing bugs. So currently now in the PTU, but performance and stuff is an ongoing thing. Alright, so art and ships. So in the US, the ships team focused on closing out the Constellation Taurus, which we now have, squashing bugs and undertaking a general polish patch. The Taurus will be flyable in the upcoming Alpha 314. There were also additional bug fixes across the wider Star Citizen fleet. The team continued working on moving the two Crusader Ares variants, the Ion and Inferno, through the pipeline. They're aiming to move into the final art stage in the coming weeks for delivery in Q4. White box for the Drake Vulture began alongside a new variant of a popular ship to be announced later in the year. A new variant of a popular ship. What do you guys think this variant could be? The Starfarer, maybe? Right? They talked about refinery and having a refinery ship. And one of the devs did mention Starfarer. The Starfarer isn't popular? Well, I mean, come on, they'll call all their ships popular. Come on. June saw the UK team complete the final art and lighting pass for an as yet unannounced ship. They then moved onto the LOD, level of detail process, and exterior damage setup. With the Aegis Redeemer's exterior completed for Invictus launch week, the team moved into the interior, completing the grey box phase for review in early July. Gold standard work also continued for the Saber and Retaliator, both of which we haven't seen any in-game progress in the PTU like we had done iteratively with the Gladius, but maybe 315 we might see some actual progress. The exterior lighting pass was done for the Saber, while the Retaliator received reworked light and door controls throughout. Okay, so that's something they didn't mention that they were getting, so door controls, just like in the MSR and in the Hercules. So finally, ships revisited the Crusader Hercules to get the A2 variant ready for release, which involved adding a kitchen area for the crew and 2 large bomb bays in the cargo hold. I wonder if that kitchen area was strictly because people were complaining about the M2 not having like a kitchen-y kind of area. Alright, so art weapons. So last month, the weapons team continued with the mining gadget, taking the assets through the LOD 0 complete and updating the rigging before passing it to animation. 3 subscriber weapon paints were finished and readied for release alongside a new knife for a future P release. So that's them saying that likely next month we're getting a new knife, everybody! Yay! The animation passes from both the standalone Greycat tractor beam and standalone salvage tool began, with iteration on their rigs being completed too. Okay. Standalone Greycat tractor beam and standalone salvage tool. So, I know it's been overdone a little bit, but where's my standalone mining tool with its standalone extraction beam? So I don't have to stand there alone as I pick up rocks for 5 hours. Anyway, so on other focus in July was on 2 new size 7 bearing ship weapons, 1 ballistic and 1 energy. Both are for an upcoming ship release and are currently in the grey box phase. Alright, audio. So alongside trailers for Alien Week and Invictus, the audio team worked towards their Alpha 314 goals. This involved significant work on Horizon. Horizon is one of the largest locations we've had to tackle for a while, true. It's huge and you can land pretty much everywhere. It was a great opportunity for us to work on something together to make the ambiances, music, and dialogue for the transport system, hospital, and gas giant. It was a challenge to keep the interior sounding clean and balanced with the windy upper atmosphere of the of the Crusader planet. We are really excited by what we've achieved, the audio team. They also worked on the hospital locations and medical gameplay in general, adding effects to the Cure Life medical tool and dialogue that makes the player sound injured and relieved when in pain. Looking forward to all the sound effects. Finally, audio supported UI features on missile operator mode and capacitor gameplay to make dogfighting gameplay smoother. Okay. Just trying to think off the top of my head with the new capacitor gameplay. I don't think I've heard any new audio just yet, so maybe that's going to be coming in either a later patch or later down the line of this PTU. Alright, then community stuff and engine. So in June, the physics team moved the generation of surfel data used for radar cross-section queries to an offline pre-computation step in the resource compiler, which in general optimizes various types of assets, textures, meshes, sounds, metadata, etc. for final consumption in-game. A great deal of time was also spent on various optimizations. All tiers of physics geometry instancing were completed. As a result, the cloning and sharing of brush physics was enabled, leading to physics now using only 50% of the memory it previously had on the client and server. This was made possible by sharing all common geometry-related data, such as geometry transforms, sub-MTLs, and surface types across all clones of the static instance. For example, a set of static objects using the same geometry. I can never understand any of this engine stuff, by the way. With the pending release of Origin in the PU, the tracking of terrain is skipped for gas giants. AVX instructions are now utilized to block set entries in spatial grids, and raybox intersections in spatial grids have been optimized. Networking-related data was moved between internal structures for more efficient access and synchronization, while the structure size of physical entities and alignments was optimized to ensure hot members are always on the same cache line. Page sizes for event factories were tuned, resulting in a net gain of 100 megabytes in system memory. Additionally, the physics query for Biome Builder was reduced, several areas of thread contention were reduced, and a race condition in the optimized priority queue was fixed. Lastly, the precision of quantized bounding volume hierarchy trees was improved. For the renderer, the team continued working on the transition to Gen 12. A Gen 12 exclusive mode for forward-rendered deferred pipelines was added. Numerous rendering issues were fixed, and editor support was improved. Support for instance constant buffers with reflection data was added, and vertex input caching was extended. In terms of visual features, support for detail cavity and gloss blending was added too. With regards to volumetric clouds, the rendering of secondary views, runtime cube maps, and rendered textures, etc., including clouds, was addressed. For empty space skipping, which is still in the very early experimental stages, computation of the narrow band SDF or signed distance fields for cloud coverage has been revised, along with the generation of associated MIP maps in signed format. An initial set of quality options was exposed to the game menu, combined as a single quality option. These quality settings will see further refinement and extensions as the system matures in releases post-Alpha 3.14, as driver issues on the 10XX GTX line of video cards affecting the computation of scattering queries was investigated and workaround implemented. The team are still in the process of clarifying whether this issue is a driver bug, and if that's the case, hope that it can be fixed properly. The core engine team finalized the switch to Clang 11. Doesn't sound good. Which is used to compile the game server. Clang-related code, vectorization, and math optimizations were enabled, and a code generation bug was identified, worked around, and reported. The memory tracker was improved to detect deallocation of memory that's not allocated, such as double free, without the use of page heap, Also, it can now filter allocation stacks by specified engine modules, and the engine's memory statistics update has been optimized. Preliminary support for the new profiler front-end was added alongside various improvements and optimizations on relevant engine components to utilize the profiler to its full capabilities. The component update scheduler received support for multiple passes, and event handlers were separated from component updates. Viz areas now use more fine-grained locking for updates to reduce contention, and the queuing of animation Viz area updates is now lockless, as is event queuing. So who here understood any of that? Did you? Because I didn't. Oh man. You did Warped? Well, you're a game dev. Anyway, so features, so characters and weapons. So June saw the feature team continuing work on actor status, this time adding different ways that recently completed statuses affect the player. For example, if a player's character's blood drug level, or BDL, becomes too high, they'll utilize a specific intoxicated locomotion set, oh, okay, running around like a drunk, and experience various on-screen effects. Oh geez. This will also affect the player's control while on foot and piloting a vehicle by adding degrees of randomness, like Grand Theft Auto's drunk driving, I guess. These effects scale with the BDL, and there are several ways to increase it. Okay, for example, a player can visit a bar and overindulge in alcohol, or they can overuse injury medication in a short period of time. Huh. Now, I wonder if CIG will also add like addiction to the game. So like if you overuse something, then you get like an addiction debuff, and you have to use, otherwise, like, you know, you'll get even worse effects and you have to like kind of wean yourself off, like a barotrauma. Anyway, so another recent addition is the down state. So unless a player receives significant damage when hit by what is currently a killing shot, they will fall over, similar to getting knocked out. In this state, they're essentially unconscious and slowly dying, with, I believe, 2 hours being like the rough number given by Rich Tyra like last week. Though teammates can resuscitate them if they arrive in time. So, the first thing we're doing is crashing vehicles into like buildings or walls even, to see if that will be enough to kill you outright, or if like you can still be saved if you were to crash while low flying, for instance. So meanwhile, work continues on different optimization initiatives, including better data encapsulation of the lower level animation update logic. A while ago, the team began exploring component update frequency as an option to reduce the cost of characters the further away they are. A number of core actor components have now implemented this, and testing is in final stages. The team is hoping to use the PTU to get a more live-like test of a cut-down version of the performance improvements, with the hopes of shipping them in the future release. Okay, then features gameplay. So the US gameplay features team spent June gearing up for the upcoming release of Alpha 3.14 and looking ahead to future initiatives. Throughout the month, they continued work on the player asset manager, with the baseline functionality implemented in May. So the player asset manager is what's going to be replacing the PMA, which is like the player mobile assistant. I don't know what it means, but the PMA is what you use right now in the Mobi Glass, which is your current asset manager for all your items. So they also worked with the narrative team to name the app, with the final decision being knickknacks. Okay. Once decided, the UI designers created a logo and general branding scheme. They're currently wrapping up leftover tasks and preparing knickknacks for its release in Q3 2021. Really, lore team? Knickknacks? The team also further developed the Ninetales Lockdown, working with QA to test and balance the dynamic event before its release in Alpha 3.14. The cargo refactor has been expanded to include resource container work. While the designs for persistent hangars and selling refactor began, with larger discussions set to happen in July. The planning and documentation initiatives from May continued throughout June too. In the UK, the team focused on features for Alpha 3.15 and 3.16, including loot generation, which will be a huge part of 3.15, I imagine. Hopefully they can get these derelicts done, the 24 derelicts done for 3.15 as well, so we have things to do. The team is now ensuring all setups are in place so that the boxes with loot are distributed with randomized variable or valuable items. They also began developing atmospheric depth damage for gas giants like Crusader. Once complete, the pressure within the gas giants will damage players' ships if they attempt to reach the core. Ship-to-ship refueling began in its production phase, which is a significant collaboration between the gameplay feature UI and vehicle teams. When live, players will be able to provide fuel to each other in exchange for credits. I look forward to that. It's going to be kind of cool. They spoke about that a bit before, using the Starfarer's refueling nozzle or whatever, and using the current docking docking tech that Merlin has for it. And then once you dock the hose into a ship, then there's a similar to mining where you have to get to a sweet spot, otherwise you can explode the ship you're trying to refuel and stuff like that. I kind of hope there's a manual way to do it as well. Alright, so features, vehicles. So last month, vehicles features work was a mix of supporting Alpha 3.14, ramping up the development of jump points, and supporting vehicle experience on their upcoming patch content. They also supported VFX in developing the new thruster dust effects mentioned in May's report, which is planned to debut in a coming patch. They also made improvements to the docking feature that didn't manage to make it into Alpha 3.13, such as allowing players to refuel, so that's what we talked about, repair, and restock vehicles docked at a station. Oh no, this is different. So this is repairing a docked Hammerhead or repairing a docked 890 jump. So a key feature in Alpha 3.14 is the new HUD technology, which is a brand new way of creating HUDs that allows for much more depth and complexity than was possible before. Recent work involved ironing out issues and filling gaps to ensure the HUD covers the many cases that exist across different ships. As that work is nearing completion, a large portion of the team moved to build out jump points. Though this feature hasn't had significant development time recently, progress is increasing rapidly as focus switches as more devs begin working on it. So I wonder how many devs it'll take to get these jump points done, because I'm guessing it's not just about the jump point, but it's also about the traversal mechanics and the traversal HUD and everything else. The vehicle experience team predominantly progressed with Alpha 3.14 tasks, including missile operator mode, the new power triangle, and the rebalance of various aspects of ship combat. As the features are tested by the Evocati, the team will continue to balance so we can improve all aspects of changes before the launch in Alpha 3.14. Alright, graphics and VFX programming. So June saw the graphics team complete work on the window and ping CIG shaders. The window shader allows them to simulate the windows of static rooms without actually modeling the interior, enabling large buildings filled with fake interiors for minimal cost, because of course not every single room needs to be seen. This approach has been used in several other games, and while the visuals are naturally constrained compared to bespoke rooms, which would be impractical for performance, I hate that word, performance, the results are vastly better than black or empty spaces. The ping CIG shader is a new version of the ping effect that will be used for the upcoming improvements to the radar and scanning feature, and we've seen that in game and it looks amazing. It creates waves that trigger various visual effects when they intersect solid geometry, such as edge highlight, and it just looks good. So for Origin, Improvements were made to the performance of real-time environment probes, and bugs were squashed ahead of release.
To resub for so long, here's to 3 months, Sigmira love.
Thank you, Cheez-It, for the 3 months. I lost my place. The Ping CIG shader is a new version of the Ping effect that will be used for the upcoming improvements to the radar and scanning feature. It creates waves that, yes. So for Orison, improvements were made to the performance of real-time environment probes, and bugs were squashed ahead of release. Improvements to the LOD merger to support tint palettes and wear was also completed to allow huge draw savings or draw call savings for distant renderings of the city. The team also made improvements to the UI compositing and post-effect pipeline to achieve the specific look the team wanted, such as drop shadows, glow, brightness adaptation, and color correction while minimizing performance impact. The VFX Programming team added support for querying cloud density from planets and used this to trigger a variety of effects. Several particle streaming issues were also addressed, and the final bugs with the new lighting system were resolved. The fire feature progressed well too. So both the graphics and VFX programming teams also made great progress on the Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan backends, with a vast majority of post effects now running Gen 12 by default. This doesn't result in major CPU performance savings, as the post effects were already cheap on the CPU side, though major benefits will be seen in scene rendering. Okay. Then for lighting, in June, the lighting team closed out their work on Crusader's new landing zone, and they say the sheer size of explorable and landable areas around Orison and the line of sight across the platforms necessitates an enormous quantity of lights. The challenge here is to provide as much lighting as possible throughout the landing zone, with a focus on the primary playable spaces and within our current tech limitations. In the final stages of their work, the team focused on the background elements of Orison, including the ring platforms, habitation platforms, and flying barges. And here are just shots of Orison. So there's one of those halos. Here is the main commons area. This is the Kovalek shipping area as well in the Providence platform. Here is this. Ooh, this is the med bay in Grim Hex, isn't it? So we don't actually know where this will be, but judging by the platform, it looks very similar to like the habs that you spawn in, but just kind of like redone. Alright, so the narrative team dedicated resources towards the upcoming patch release. So all patches require bug fixes, string reviews, and quality of life improvements, but special focus was placed on the final polish pass for Orison. The team also provided narrative support for upcoming events, including IAE 2951 and several dynamic missions. Okay, so that's pretty soon. IAE, so the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, it's only July. They have like maybe 2 or 3 months, right? The development of Pyro continued, with the narrative providing write-ups to the arts and design teams to help further flesh out the system. Time was also spent on developing additional AI-built behavior flows and scripts to create more realistic interactions in the future. Narrative direction was also provided to further enhance the lore of the upcoming medical and hacking gameplay, and preparation was done in advance of the upcoming motion capture shoot. I believe, oh yes, they talked about this again. This 4-day-long motion capture thing that I believe is for capturing all the different kinds of alertness states and stuff for NPCs, but also they kind of touched upon it before, but arcade animations and other things as well. Hacking animations too, most likely. So in celebration of Alien Week, the narrative participated in a special Inside Star Citizen about various alien cultures in SC, and released a Jean letter to the community to translate. Lastly, the final part of A Gift for Baba was published, and the entire story is now available to read on Spectrum. Okay, then the props team. So last month, the team focused on closing out their tasks for Horizon, including the dressing props around the city and high-tech hospital props. They continued work on the upcoming colonialism outposts too. So they say this was a welcome break from the clean high-tech assets that we've been doing recently, and the team has been pushing our materials and really trying to hit the mark set out in the new colonialism art style guide. Okay. And then elsewhere, the team tackled tech debt and made great progress closing out bugs. And then QA's primary publishing focus was stabilizing Alpha 3.14 to test in the staging environment and preparing it for Evocati, which was done later in the month. For development, QA worked throughout tests requests for upcoming gameplay features and dynamic events. Time was also dedicated to scheduling, ensuring the team have proper coverage for upcoming content and events. They also planned out what's needed for staging streams as far as headcount and ownership. What does that mean? Staging streams? No idea. So systemic services and tools. So in June, systemic services and tools geared up for the next iteration of the economy and AI simulation, which has improved fidelity and interaction with the game itself and is easier to manage via new integrated tools. And I can't wait for that to come out. And I really do hope that it does wipe like currency and a whole bunch of other stuff, you know, because otherwise there really isn't much for us to work with. The team also finished upgrades to Ubuntu 20.04 and continued the foundational work for various services such as the AI info service and ATC service. They're currently working towards applying tech created for direct connections to other services to help alleviate bottlenecks on the backend. Then in tech animation, looking back over the quarter, tech animation made great progress with their pipelines and tasks, balancing the fine line between user support and productivity to deliver many of the features and contents they wanted to. R&D into streamlining the facial scan and scan creation pipelines was completed, with the outcome saving the art team significant man-hours over the coming years. This also formed the cornerstone in tech animation's own facial rig building process and will ultimately expedite the entire facial pipeline. One main aim of the quarter was to upgrade the head asset and facial animation system codebase, which is currently well underway. The team also managed to overhaul the weapons pipeline with a facelift and new toolsets to assist with technical elements. The tech animation was supported by tech art in upgrading their export processes. Once complete, they moved onto the skeletal optimization process that will improve character hitboxes when completed. Alright, and then, almost last but not least, Turbulent. So last month, role-based access control in Hex received a new iteration which allows for different levels of access to the tool based on more granular roles. The team also worked on a launcher update featuring quality of life fixes, an epilepsy warning before launch, and new channels for internal testing. And with Horizon's new LED screens that have like sub-pixels rendered and stuff that you can like walk up to and stare and like get dazed. Yeah, I think an epilepsy warning is probably needed. The game services team continued to focus on the server meshing project alongside working on service improvements and documentation. As they closed out 2021's second quarter, Turbulent's web team made great additions to the RSI website, following on from improvements to the roadmap progress tracker earlier in the year. The team created more efficient automation tools for roadmap publishing to make it easier to review and publish content. June also saw the completion of the new multi-user private lobbies in Spectrum. A completion? June? So, we've been waiting for multi-user private lobbies for quite some time now, and they were like, I believe the last quote we got from a dev was like end of year. Hopefully, we get this for at the very least 3.15. So they say this is the first step in connecting Spectrum groups to in-game chat lobbies. The bug fixes and quality of life improvements were substantial, and set the feature up well for connection to the game. The Spectrum team also added more features into the app with moderator tools currently in development. Text anchoring was also worked on, which will be available to all users. So text anchoring is also something that we've needed on Spectrum for so long, because right now on Spectrum, if you're talking like in a chat and somebody says something to you and you press on the notification, it takes you to the chat, but you have no idea where they replied to you at, how long ago it was, and what you said. So yeah, text anchoring couldn't come sooner for Spectrum, because right now it's just kind of like it's there, but it's not like useful for anything. Then on the back end, the team focused on performance improvements, ensuring that the number of requests can exponentially grow with the size of the Star Citizen community. The team participated in two major tasks to support this. Firstly, they were able to split the database and store orders, helping to better distribute the load on the database structure during major events. Secondly, they split how they write log files for user activity in the database, making it execute into a queue, ensuring log activity never slows down writes that need to happen immediately. For example, when a player logs in. These efforts have shown significant performance gains on the platform and allowed Turbulence to downscale some of their servers in June. The web team supported the release of the Gattac Rylan and other promotions throughout the month. And in UI, so the programmers for the UI feature team worked through large ongoing tasks in June. First, they worked closely with the actor feature team on healing gameplay, specifically creating the medical UI screens used for healing and other functionality in the hospitals. I cannot wait for the ISC on healing gameplay, just to see what the HUDs and stuff look like, because it's going to be a big one, or we're going to have multiple, because it's going to have to cover not only the healing gun and the healing gun UI, but also things like the medical beds as well. So next, they further developed the core tech for the new star map and connected it to the radar system. New star map. Okay. The new star map is connected to the radar system? That's big. They're currently focusing on the back-end code that connects the AR markers, the star map, the interior map, and radar system. In-game functionality will come next, followed by UI in the future. So like, I know that currently, with the old star map, on certain holographic ships you can like zoom all the way out and kind of see the star map. So it seems like with this new star map they're also doing that, but I look forward to see if it, it adds to anything or makes it different. Alright, so the UI tech team connected the Building Blocks UI system to the Flowgraph dev tool, which will give level designers more flexibility to connect UI to the game without relying on programmers for implementation. They also tackled UI-related bugs for the upcoming patch release. The artists and designers worked on interactive screens for Horizon and updated transit signs that will gradually make their way into the game. They were also thinking about the next iteration of the Mobi Glass, with the designers and artists concepting potential layouts and animations for the overall feel of the system. So not the actual item, but the UI itself. Future vehicle HUD concepts and variety of logos for the use of environments and UI were developed too. So I cannot wait for this new Mobi Glass. So it just says that they're thinking about the next iteration, but I can't wait for it, because first of all, the current Mobi Glass is kind of bad. It has so many placeholder options and placeholder text and things on it, which just need to go away. Secondly, it'll be using building blocks, which will mean that if anybody is using a Mobi Glass, then you can look what they're looking at, which is kind of cool. Kind of cool. Alright, then in vehicle tech, the vehicle tech team spent time putting the finishing touches on the radar, scanning and ping refactor, getting it ready for Alpha 3.14. Along with getting the features polished, they squashed numerous bugs, including several relating to damage, repair, landing gear, targeting, and game crashes. Meanwhile, improvements were made to doors. This involved improving player interaction with door panels and airlocks and solving issues with the transition between the atmosphere and the vacuum of space. New Babbage to sell Mobi privacy filters. I mean, yeah, it'd be kind of cool if like you could choose for your Mobi Glass to be private, or you could choose for it to be visible. As long as it's like a player option to do so, that would be really cool. Because like building blocks and just in general being able to see somebody's HUD in that way is a breakthrough. No other game, no other MMO, no other like multiplayer game does that. So like, at least that I know of. So like the more places you can see that, the better, because it's such an immersive thing. Although you can see somebody looking at their phone in real life, but you wouldn't like look over their shoulder, because as immersive as that is in real life, you also don't want a black eye, so you know. VFX. Throughout June, the VFX team focused on Horizon, fine-tuning the many effects required for the expansive location. We're excited for the Alpha 3.14 release because it will be our first with the new particle lighting model. As mentioned in previous reports, this will allow a much better quality of lighting for particles, but more importantly, will allow us to create effects in a more consistent way without worrying that different environment lighting will cause the effects to not work as well. For example, the same effect in a darkly lit room versus a brightly moonlit area in space. Okay. The team also continued their process of fleshing out the destruction pipeline, focusing on a Theaters of War map containing a huge explosion sequence. Okay. So they have mentioned that before they release Theaters of War, they don't just want that one Crossroads of Crime map done and polished, they want at least 2 to cycle through. So that's that second one they're talking about there that might have a huge explosion sequence. So final improvements were made to the new vehicle radar ping effects following feedback, and several miscellaneous tweaks were made in the run-up to Alpha 3.14's release. Okay, and that's that for this month's report. Lots of cool stuff to see and to talk about for sure. Looking forward to 3.15 so much. 3.14 is promising. I mean, like, it's not even out yet. It's in the PTU currently, and we've been testing it and looking at it, and it's been a lot of fun. Obviously, they're not done with implementing it, and there will be subsequent patches before it gets released to the wider audience, where it's going to be a little bit more polished than it currently is. But I am really looking forward to 3.15. I think the things that will be going into 3.15 will really make Star Citizen go from what it currently is to this kind of like survival game MMO that like I kind of like want to see it go to, you know, with the backpacks and everything else. And yeah, what do you guys think? Thank you guys so much for watching. I do apologize for all the stuttering and stammering and stuff this time around with the read, but hey, hopefully I'll do better next time, huh? If you did like this, if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next month. Hopefully a little bit more, I guess, on time with this. We're about 3 days late for this monthly report reading. And yeah, we also do other things as well. So monthly reports, we do like the roadmap roundups, generally everything. So yeah, until next time though, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.